Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Summer Flynn. Summer, how you doing today?
I am wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is such an honor for me. I've been such a fan of you for a very long time.
Aw.
But before we talk about why you're here, Summer, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. Summer was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, but moved to Chicago about 15 years ago. And she is the creator and co host of one of my favorite horror podcasts, which is The Dolls of Horror. So, her and her co host, Jamie, really, really awesome what you guys do over there. And it is the official podcast of the Days of the Dead conventions and the official panel host at those cons. These guys are so amazing and so incredible. What got you started with the podcast?
Well, it's a funny story. I always wanted to do something like this, just talk horror on a public forum, didn't know what to do or how to do it. And I was listening to this podcast called It's a Horror Podcast
Okay.
from Wes and Kevin. And they're a couple of guys also based out of the Midwest. They're not doing it anymore, but the episodes are still out there. So you should check them out. And I thought they sounded really good and I liked what they were doing. And so I reached out to them and said, "Hey, how are you guys doing this? The logistics and the technicality of it all because I suck at tech." And they walked me through what they did and they pretty much coached me the entire time of setting this up. And
That's
anytime I had
incredible.
questions with anything, they were there to answer and both of them were great. And I went to my one of my best friends named Tori. We actually met at a horror convention at a flashback weekend in Chicago in 2017. We met in line for a Robert England photo op and became best friends. And I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, girl, what do you think about doing a podcast kind of like what these guys are doing?" I sent her an episode and she goes, "I'm in." So
Yeah.
I created it with her, with Tori. And then Tori's life got too busy and hectic, and she had to like take a step back. And that's when Jamie came into our lives. And
And
that's,
it's
yeah,
amazing. Like I said, you guys are obviously doing something right to be the official podcast of the Days of the Dead conventions, and
yeah.
you are because it's so fun and entertaining to listen to. When you're listening to you two, it feels like you've been friends for a long time, and you're just having a conversation, and
Hmm.
you're right there as a part of the conversation. And if you guys haven't already, I do have the podcast links down in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the podcast. Make sure you're following Summer and the Dolls of Horror on social media. I have all of their links in the description as well. But we know about the podcast now, but a little bit about your background. You grew up as a figure skater. You would do
Yeah.
routines to horror scores, which
Yes,
is so fucking dope. Like that is
I
the
did.
coolest shit ever.
I did.
Um, and then, musical theater, you did
Hmm.
dance, and you had, these things growing up, which is funny because we'll talk about your first horror movie in a minute. But, when you're doing dance and when you're doing musical theater and things like that, the adrenaline that you get from that, the attention, the on stage, you think that that had a big part in who you are now and what you like to do with the podcast and being a convention host and things like that?
Probably, yeah. I was terribly shy as a child. Very, very, very shy. Really dorky, really ugly. Like not a cute kid at all, really not. So when I started doing the figure skating, I kind of got more comfortable in having this skill set that I just happened to be good at. And I guess the rest kind of followed from there. And I've loved horror since long before I was a figure skater, and I loved horror scores. So then it just came natural to me to want to skate to the Wes Craven's New Nightmare ending titles. I remember doing a routine to Dream Warriors also from Dawkins. That was a fun one. Lots of beats to jump on there. And then when the skating career kind of crumbled because my body gave out on me, I moved right into musical theater, and was lucky enough to fall in with a really good set of professional actors who taught me a lot and really coached me through that. And yeah, it's all about the performing now. And of course that definitely helps for the podcast, and it really helps for hosting, getting used to being in front of people, and um having to ad lib and talk to them and just improvise. And when things go wrong, just rolling with it.
You got to be able to turn it on its head and flip it right
Yes,
back around. So,
yes,
well, and then you talk about that. You've also had small parts in two films that are coming out
yes,
soon.
yes.
Crave Roots of Evil, directed by Remy St. Paul and co-starring the beautiful and amazing Felissa Rose.
Mhm,
And then Dr. Gift, directed by Abel Berry, co-starring Danielle Harris, which
mhm.
is getting its theatrical premiere on September 21st. So right around the corner, guys.
I
So that is going
know.
to be premiering at the Angelica. Is it Angelica?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, theater
Yes.
in Dallas. So if you're in the Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas area,
Mhm.
come on out September 21st. Hang out with this beautiful woman, hang out with all the people that are a part of this movie, Dr. Gift. Um, so proud of you. So proud of you. As someone that's been there, we grow up watching horror movies and then we get to be a
Mhm.
part of something like this. We get to go to a
Yeah.
premiere and we get to be a part of it. Like it really is breathtaking and it's so phenomenal. And I couldn't be happier for you if you paid me. So,
Oh.
you're becoming a part of these things, being in movies. How do you, because, obviously musical theater, dance, stuff like that, that's instant gratification.
Mhm.
It's like I'm
Mhm.
watching the crowd. I see them watching me. I'm getting this right now. With film, it can be 2-3 years maybe before you get to see the final product. So between the two, which one is more of a summer thing?
Well, I gotta say, live theater is my biggest passion outside of horror films.
Mhm.
So definitely that. However, it's very time consuming. I don't have the time to devote to a month of rehearsal and a month of shows 6 nights a week with working the jobs and of course the horror convention stuff. I just don't have time for it anymore, even though that's what I really, really love to do. And
Right.
honestly, I'm probably not that talented anymore. I'm 20 years out of practice on it.
Yeah. I
So,
have a
I mean,
feeling it's like riding a bike and you get
I don't
right back on it.
I don't know, man. I can't skate anymore. It's rough. So, learning film and how to act on film, I'm still getting used to it. It is a completely different ball game.
Right.
I loved the experiences, but I'm really nervous to see myself on the screen. It's probably going to be like this the whole time.
Oh,
Like
I'm
I
sure you
suck.
killed it. I can't wait to check this out. And
Yeah,
it
just small baby parts, but it was
doesn't matter.
so much
Like
fun. Great experience.
something you will always be able to say for the
Yeah.
rest of eternity is I got to act in movies with Felissa Rose and Danielle Harris.
Yes.
No one can ever take that away from you at any point. So that's
I know.
phenomenal.
I
Phenomenal. I'm so
know.
happy for you. And these are people that we grew up idolizing,
It's
Felissa,
true.
Danielle, people that are just, gigantic in the scene. And, the fact that you share the screen with them,
I
that's
know.
special. It's
Not
special. So don't
not
undersell
just
yourself.
Thank you. Not just that, I didn't get to, I know Danielle, of course, through the conventions and such, and I know her managers, but so I didn't get to act on screen with her. We just shot at separate weeks, but I did get to act opposite Felissa, like on set, same day. There is no cutting there. We were there. That
That's
was, and again, I've been friends with her for a few years as well before this. So that was pretty awesome, pretty magical. I was very nervous and she like set my nerves at ease. And that movie, I think that's still I think they're still working on that one.
Mhm.
COVID kind of wrecked it. We shot it right before COVID and,
Ah.
kind of derailed everything.
Well, the best way for you guys to keep up on when we're going to get release dates on that is by following Summer on social media. I already told you her links are down in the description. So make sure you're following her. Make sure you're following the Dolls and subscribing on all your platforms where available so you can help support the podcast as well. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. Now, Summer, in order for you to have a horror podcast, in order for you to act in horror movies and be a huge part of the horror genre, horror had to start for you somewhere. So
Oh yeah.
now, Summer, I would like to go back to the past and talk
Okay.
about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And the first time I've talked about it here on the podcast, Summer, your first horror movie was.
Suspiria original 1977. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was
And we
8
talked
years
about
old.
how, dance and things like that are going to come into play with your
Yes.
first horror movie. Do you think that like maybe drew you into the movie a little bit more because you had
Oh
kind
yeah.
of an idea of what they were doing and what they were talking about?
Oh yeah. I wasn't a ballerina at that point exactly. Loved the ballet. I was obsessed with ballet and dance at the time. I loved watching it. It's what I love most to watch. And I was at my grandmother's house where I was exposed to most cool things in my life because she had a house full of foster kids. And at the time, I was an only child. And my Aunt Deanna rented Suspiria. And she was, I don't know, she's probably maybe 10 years older than me, and maybe a little bit less. And I idolized this woman, still
Yeah.
do. I thought she was the most beautiful woman in the whole world. She was in high school, so she was like super cool, right? And so I wanted to watch whatever she was watching. So we rented this movie and we were watching it on the bunk beds. I have this like flashbulb memory of like cuddling on the bunk beds and watching Suspiria and seeing the ballet. And I'm like, ballet? What? And I loved witches too. Like the worst witch was one of my childhood favorites. So I loved witches and witchcraft and those kind of movies. So I said
Mhm.
ballet and witches. Oh my God, mind blown.
Right. Right. And it's amazing how our peers, especially when they're older than us, how they can influence us. And
Yeah.
if they're doing it, it
Yeah.
must be fucking rad. It must be cool as
Yeah.
hell. So I can't wait to do this. And thank you, Auntie, for introducing her. So
I always wanted to be just like Aunt Deanna. I always wanted to be exactly like her. I wanted to look like her. I wanted to be her. I mean, that sounds really creepy, but yeah, she was like my hero growing up.
that was Josh Miller for me, my cousin. That was he was my idol growing up. So I understand whatever he
Yeah.
did, that was cool as hell. So
Mhm.
we talked, you were with your aunt, you were at your grandma's house. You said right around 8 years old, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, young lady, when you're watching this film for the first time, do you
Yeah.
remember which scene it was, Summer, that affected you the most?
Um, okay, so I was drawn in and intrigued by the ballet scene when they're having that first rehearsal. I
Mhm.
was like, "Whoa, so cool." And I really liked the colored outfits and the shoes they were wearing. Now, watching it now as an adult, I'm like, "No way in hell that would be in the dress code," right? It's like, "Hell no. No way. Everything about this was like not accurate as far as like rules and regulations for ballet goes, but I loved how it looked. Um, but as far as like, I vividly remember that opening kill where she gets like stabbed and then she falls through the plate glass window, and you're seeing the knife go in and out and in and out, and the blood's coming out, and it was, you could see the beating heart. And I remember thinking, shouldn't she be dead already, not knowing how the body works? I thought that you would die more instantly after that, but I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor.
Right.
8-year-old me thought she should have been dead already. And then the
I'm poking
colors were
holes in
so
it already.
vibrant. Argento is full of right. Argento is full of like reds and primary colors. And so, of course, that would attract a little young person to just visually. So I vividly remember that scene. And I also really, really, really remember the barbed wire scene or not so barbed wire scene affecting me. And I also remember asking Aunt Deanna, what's that? Like, because I didn't know what barbed wire or wire was. Like, what's going on here? And so she had to explain it to me.
Right.
Little
And see,
8-year-old
that's what's
me.
amazing is like when you had these people that are so, like I said, with me, it was my cousin Josh. Like he would,
Yeah,
what does this mean? What's happening here? Why is
yeah.
this going on? And to get that type of education to go along with it really does help you to understand the movie a little bit better too, especially at a young age. We often forget that when we're 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, we don't know all these things.
No,
They are new to us. We don't understand. You
nope.
get stabbed, you die. That's it. We don't understand, that it doesn't happen instantaneously.
And
Moments
also,
like
like,
that through
when
a
you're
film.
watching a killing in, like, an action film, maybe? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
yeah, when you're watching maybe someone getting shot in an action film, they pretty much die right away,
Mhm.
right? So in my brain, that's all I had to
Right.
associate movie killings and death with was watching action films
Mhm.
because my dad liked the action films and stuff. So I thought you got shot and you died right away. So wouldn't stabbing be the same way? Again, not realistic. I know now, but 8-year-old me did not.
Yeah. Just ask Dewey. It doesn't always happen right away. Um,
Or over and over again, yeah.
Right, right. So we know which scene it was that affected you the most from Suspiria,
Mhm.
but what would you say your favorite scene from the film is?
Oh, that's tough. Oh, I
Which
have
is
several.
crazy because this is a
I have
movie
s
that,
yeah.
like, even though I haven't been able to talk about it on the podcast a lot, this is my first time doing it on my first horror movie. But
uh,
man, this is just one of those movies that you watch it and you're just mesmerized throughout
I
the whole film. Even now, as a 37-year-old man, I'm watching this movie and you're just like, wow, it's beautiful and
yeah,
it's smart and
yeah.
it's gory, it's graphic,
Mhm.
it's so good.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So those 2 scenes I really love to this
Mhm.
day, probably because of the nostalgia that goes with it. I also really love the maggot scene. I also 8-year-old me didn't really understand what maggots were, so Deanna had to explain that to me too. God bless her. She put up with me. I mean, I must have been so obnoxious and her little thorn in her side, but she
Yeah.
was so wonderful with me. And, it was so wonderful. So that and I'm God, favorite scene. That is so tough. I love all the dancing scenes, of course. I
Yeah.
really, really did. I especially love that wide shot right before Susie's gonna, like, collapse, and she's, like, on her point shoes, and it's a very weird and awkward angle, but I just the dancer in me loves that so much, so,
Mhm.
yeah, I'd say that
Yeah.
was definitely a top scene for me too. I like watching that one.
Right. And it's amazing how you had this thing that was so close to you and then it gets brought to you in horror movie form. Like that's special. Like that
Yeah,
really is genuinely special. And
yes.
we talk about throughout Hollywood, especially, remakes, requels, sequels, it's kind of all the rage. And Suspiria did get the remake treatment. So I gotta ask, have you okay, there's my answer. Not a fan at all then.
Let me explain, okay?
Okay.
Now, I should also say that we have covered both the original and the remake on the podcast this year.
Okay.
So we covered the original, like I think it was the first episode of 2023, and then a few months later we did the remake. So, I mean, I hate long movies. I really hate long movies. There's nothing I love more than an 80-minute runtime.
Mhm.
Maybe 95, right? But, I mean, over 2 hours is tough for me, to do in one sitting, and watching the remake, I was so bored. I remember watching it for the first time. I bought it on DVD because I couldn't find it streaming anywhere, and I found it for, like, $10 on Amazon or whatever, so I bought it. And I remember watching it and not liking the dancing at all and being so bored. And at the hour and a half mark, I was like, Jesus, how much longer? And I turned the timer on to my DVD. I'm like, there's still an hour left. It was an hour and a half in, and there's still an hour to go. Hell no. Kind of turned it off and I didn't pick it up again for like a year.
Yeah.
It's just
See,
too
and
long and I was so bored and I didn't like the dancing.
no, and that's the thing. Like when you're going to do a movie like Suspiria, you have to be able to keep me intrigued throughout
Yeah.
the whole movie. Because once you start to lose me, you've lost me. I didn't grow up with giallo films at all, so like that was kind of a foreign, no pun intended, thing for me. I didn't. I just never gravitated to that style of film. So
Me
if you
neither.
want to hook me,
I'm not even like that. Suspiria was kind of the only one.
well, you picked a damn good one.
I know, Deanna picked the good one, Suspiria was the only real one I saw. I did watch some English and Australian horror films when I was
Mhm.
younger, but as far as, like, really, like, foreign Italian stuff, that was kind of, like, it for
Okay,
me for quite a while, and I'm not too big into it now. Even my co-host Jamie is much more into giallo than I am, for sure.
right.
But back to the remake, like I said, I was so bored, and I didn't like the dancing, and it was so long. But when we did cover it, I did like it a little bit more when we really broke it down. I found more things I liked about it. So I will give it that. I think my rating went up like 2 points or something, and so I
Sure.
think I would have given it like a 1 out of 10, and I think I would give it like a 3. So there was some redeeming qualities on that second watch, for sure.
Good.
Yeah.
So we know what the first Suspiria movie means to you. It's obviously very important to you. It was your first horror movie, and it means the world to you. But here for a second, I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball, Summer.
Uh,
Um, my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he
oh,
has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Summer? What is your
Candyman.
favorite? Oh, is it really?
Candyman. Original, of course. Yeah. Candyman, man.
That is fucking awesome. One of the
Without
best,
hesitation.
horror love stories, man.
Thank you. That's what I
Yeah,
tell people when they look at me like I'm fucking insane. Can I swear? Sorry.
yeah,
Yeah, they look at me like I'm insane. I said, no, it's like Romeo and Juliet. It's a love story. It's a tragedy. And if you go into part 2, you see more of the love story and the history of it all. And I mean, my husband was also Black, so I have that whole interracial connection thing going on
Mhm.
too. I live in Chicago now, so I think I might have seen it when I was in between 10 to 12 years old. I saw Candyman for the first time, and it was fairly new. And I live in Chicago now and got all these great Chicago scenes and stuff. And Cabrini Green is now torn down and they have high-rise condos built there now, but there's still signs out there that read Cabrini too. So they haven't quite forgotten what this used to be, which I think is very, very cool.
Right. And that movie I'm with you. I love that movie. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. The social messages that come along with that
Yep.
movie, the true horror that comes
Mhm.
along with that movie.
Mhm.
It's such a fantastic, and Tony Todd is just so ridiculous in that movie.
Tony Todd is so hot. Can I say?
Oh my God.
I
Listen,
told him that to his face too. So I mean,
yeah, I am straight.
he's
I'm
also my
100%
birthday
straight.
twin. We're both
But
born on December 4th.
hey, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm 100% straight. No interest in men, but yeah, he's sexy as shit. Like,
So
like
sexy.
I got no problem saying a dude is sexy as hell. And Tony Todd,
Yeah.
like, when I die, I want him to narrate my life.
Oh, that
Like,
voice. His voice is just
yeah,
hypnotizing almost, very much like he does in the movie. But when you're in his presence in person and you'll hear him
powerful.
talk and you hear him tell the stories, and he's an inspirational individual as well with all the work he's done in the communities and all that. He's done a lot of amazing work for the community. And I mean, you hear him talk and tell those stories, and it's just mesmerizing. He is
And
a very special guy.
when you talk to him too, he's all about, auras
Hmm.
and you're like, oh my gosh, like when we met him, he was like, I love your vibe. And I was like, oh my, I can die. That's it. I've lived. Everything I've
Right?
wanted to ever do is done. So um
Right?
so I've had an amazing time with you, Summer, talking about, how you got started in horror, your first horror movie, and some of the backstory of your life as well. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to Suspiria, and what we're
Hmm.
going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not judging Suspiria on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. What we're doing here is strictly ranking Suspiria on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Summer, what would your ranking of Suspiria be?
Can I ask you, what do you mean by effective? Like,
Like,
are you talking scared or
no,
happy
like
or
what it means to you, like how much it
okay?
affected you in your direction in your life in horror.
Oh, 5.
I figured it had to
Can I
be.
give it a 10? I mean,
Right.
without this movie, if it had been any other movie, I might not have loved horror as much.
Mhm.
So there's something about this movie and the dance and the witch and everything, and it wasn't that gory, so it was good for an 8-year-old me, right?
Right.
Yeah, it didn't frighten me. I was intrigued by it. So if it had been a different movie, The Thing, or as good as The Thing is, I probably would not have fallen so deeply in love with the genre.
Sure. Yeah,
Hmm.
and like I said, that's what this is all about. So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I have all of Summer's social media links, as well as the Dolls of Horror social media links and the podcast down in the description. So make sure you're following along and make sure you're subscribing so you can become a part of their podcast family as well. Summer, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
And
Um,
don't forget, can I plug our YouTube? I don't know if it's down there, but
100.
we're really trying to work on growing that YouTube thing. That's where you can find all of our panel interviews and everything like that is on our YouTube. So you'll get to see those videos on Instagram and stuff at some point, but I get them on the YouTube first. So I believe it's like youtube.com/the dolls of horror or dolls of horror or something. I'll give you the link to that. I'm not sure if you have that one at this moment, but yeah, we're really working on the YouTube, and that's where you can find all our Days of the Dead shenanigans.
Well, as she said, that link is down in the description as well. So make sure you guys are following along. Subscribe to the YouTube because we all know how stingy YouTube's little algorithm can be. And while we're talking about that, make sure if this is your first time here, please do like and subscribe. It really helps the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay who you are, and we'll see you guys soon.